the Lake Michigan Angler Podcast.
Fish on, guys, right here.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Lake Michigan Angler Podcast. Today we're here with Nick Van Gompel of the Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Series and longtime kayak pro Keith Galhar.
Hey, welcome guys.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you guys for making the time to join us for this episode. This is now the second one for kayak fishing.
Yep.
It's really cool because having both of you guys here, I think the idea here is to talk about a different aspect of kayak fishing, which is more of like the competitive side and the tournament side, especially because it's still, in my opinion, in its infancy, and what the Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Tournament Series is doing, at least in my mind, and there's like I think there's also like the KBF, that's local, like Illinois kind of regional base as well. But there seems to be just a few, and it's still a lot more potential, and it's growing. And as the kayak community grows, I think it's a great opportunity to shed light on this side of it for folks that are curious, interested. What does it take? You've both competed, you've both have placed and won and whatnot. So that's kind of like the conversation I like to have. But before we even get to that, I would love to know how you even got started into kayak fishing. I mean, when you think about it, and we had this conversation recently, I got in about 2013. And so where do you remember, Nick? I'll start with you, Nick.
Sure.
Where did you even think kayaks? And I want to fish out of it. What was that process? How did that start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone kind of sits around and they could reflect on when they first started. For me, it was when I moved up to Manitowoc, and I had done some salmon fishing before out of a boat, and I thought, it'd be nice to get out there more often. I can't really do it. I have a car. I don't have a truck yet. So kayaks, great. I can put that on top of my car and go wherever I want. So that's what I ended up buying. And actually, I watched a lot of your videos to figure out how to do this. So, so I bought all the stuff, and that's where I first started out kayak fishing. I did one salmon tournament with Great Lakes, and that was, I think, 2015. It was maybe like the first year or second year of the series. And from that point onward, they asked, are you coming back next year for the bass tournament? I thought, yeah, sure. What guy can't catch bass out of a kayak? Right?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. So that's how it all started for me, and that was 2015, and now here it is 2022. Still going strong in the kayak fishing, and still get out, try to get out at least once a week, but it gets tough, as life progresses. So
Yeah, it definitely does. And Keith, now you're kind of like the OG in this. I mean, he kind of mentioned it that you've been doing it for quite a while and have put up videos and shared information over the years. Where did it all start for you?
Well, back in 2004, I had met my future wife, and she had friends that fished Salmon-orama in the boat division. And I had just bought a kayak, and I was into it, and I had met them, and they said, well, you should try out the kayak division in there. The guy just won it last year, and he caught like an 8-pound king or something, So I was like, all right. I grew up fishing shore on Lake Michigan, but I was like, all right, well, give this a try. And so I'd fish on their boat every once in a while, so they'd help me out, like trying to figure out a technique to use. And so yeah, we started practicing a little bit, and then in 2005, I competed with the Salmon-orama and started there, and I ended up winning that one. So that was pretty cool.
You won quite a few. You won how many Salmon-oramas have you won?
I've won 5.
That's
just a casual 5. No big deal.
Are you how do I ask this? Are you with the 5 wins out of the kayak division? Are you like?
Yes.
You're at the top right now? No one's beaten the 5 just yet?
Mark is, I think he's got 3 wins.
He's on your heels.
He's on my heels, yeah. He knows it too. Yeah.
It's always fun to see the friendly competitive banter between some of the guys, In 2005, the kayak industry manufacturing side wasn't like it is now. So, what were you paddling? Paddling.
My first kayak was a Pungo, a Wilderness Systems Pungo 140, and that's what I used the first year.
Okay.
And then after that, I ended up getting a Native Watercraft Ultimate kayak, and I used that for quite a few years. And that's just an open bow-to-stern hybrid canoe kayak that there was, water can come in And if you flip that thing, you ain't flipping it back over. There's no bailing out. It really isn't. So it was not the best.
But not the
kayak for
ideal.
Lake Michigan, but it worked. It was a good kayak for that.
When you think about it, I mean, a lot of what you were doing and what you were doing back in the early on was groundbreaking because we didn't know what we know now. Like there's certain kayaks that are designed way better for this kind of fishing that we do. That if you're new to this, it's in your best interest for your safety and for just the performance that you want to go this route versus, and nowadays they make kayaks for rivers and, so you got a lot of stuff. So you guys were just in uncharted waters figuring it all out.
Yeah, there was a Facebook group, Michigan Kayak Fishing, I think it was, held Dan Dalton used to have that. And so I ended up meeting up with those guys. There was a handful of people that were doing it.
Right.
And that kind of,
Like the early trendsetter groups that were really kind of spearheading that. What and for you, Nick, when you first got started, what kayak did you venture in? Because now you said that was this was what again? What year? 2015.
2015.
So there were kayaks were starting in that period because I got in 13. So that was when we started to see it kind of start bubbling. It was
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was going to be doing a lot of Lake Michigan fishing, so I specifically bought the biggest one I could possibly buy because I thought, that'd be the safest option. So I bought a Hobie 14.
Smart.
14. And it's got the rod holders. It's all set up for salmon fishing, and of course, then you just do all the other types of fishing out of it as well.
Yeah, I always love the inbuilt rod holders. Makes it really easy to just.
Trolling rods don't fit in there quite as well as bass rods.
but bass rod, for the bass stuff. So we kind of you got started. What were some of the growing pains, if you would, early on that you can remember as you were figuring out this kayak fishing on Lake Michigan? Keith?
I'll go to my first day of Salmonorama in 2005. I'm in a paddle kayak, and I have an old 2009 Penn reel, which has 0 gear ratio, I swear. And I had it on lead core because they said if you kind of have one rod, use lead core, you can get to almost any depth, and just adjust your speed. It's a lot easier to use. So I had one rod, that's all I ran. And I was going along about 60 feet of water, and all of a sudden, boom, got a hit. First reaction, of course, is grab your rod. Well, the kayak slides through the water so easy. As soon as I grabbed my rod and put any tension, I just started sliding right towards it, and I could hardly bring in any line whatsoever. So that fish just popped off within a few minutes, a few seconds, So lost that one, and that was the same thing that happened again. Eventually, I learned that in a kayak, once you first get bit, if you're paddling especially, is that you don't grab the rod. That's your first initial. You want to get the rod, but you just got to paddle hard, get the hook set in, and then start to reel towards them, and then keep your kayak parallel to them so you can get some tension so you don't slide so fast to them if you have a low gear ratio reel.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest mistake I made off the front, I came from a boat originally I was fishing with my dad, and we had dipsies and we had downriggers. So I took 2 dipsies and I put them on both rods, and that got tiring really fast. And I didn't realize how exhausted I was. So I came back to shore and I pulled my kayak 10 feet up the beach, and I have to sit down for 10 minutes and recover because I was just flat out exhausted.
And he kind of speaks to something that Rob has mentioned. A lot of guys are like, man, I have a kayak. I want to run dipsies in the spring and do all these kind of more techniques are reserved for boats typically, and Rob's like, it's not necessary, and it could be why you're going to expend a lot more energy. There's a lot of drag in the water.
Yeah.
Even in the summer when you're pulling just a regular flasher fly and you got your torpedo weight. I know some guys like to run like California style, the 1 pound, even a 2 pound little rigger balls that'll put them on there, and it's a lot. It's tiring real fast.
Every little thing that you put in the water creates drag, and you feel it in the kayak.
Yeah.
You get some weeds caught on something, you're going to feel that.
Yeah.
It's going to slow you down. You're just expending more energy, and you know it right away.
Yeah, which is the great thing. You learn your boat fairly quickly, I think, in that same regard, because you start to feel it. You feel the movement, what it's like when it's operating, and the minute you get something in the prop or when you're pulling something, you're like, it's not pulling right, something's off. You get that's the really cool thing about it. It's such an intimate experience, and you really feel everything. I mean, every little part of it you're feeling. So as you guys are progressing here, it's interesting for you, Keith, is that you started and you went head into the competitive side pretty fairly early, right? I mean, you got into it and then you jumped right into that side of.
For Salmon, that was my main thing. It was a once a year, is a 9-day tournament, and I found it out. Like when I first started, I'd fish every 9 days, and sometimes I'd fish morning and night, and it was, so I put my time in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What and for you, Nick, when you started with the Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Series, what motivated you to get involved?
Oh, these guys. So I was fishing with them in a salmon tournament and came back the next time for bass. And I'm just a competitive person by nature. So, of course, everyone wants to win every tournament they ever enter. And being new to the series, I want to make sure that I was being successful right off the bat. It was challenging, I will say that for sure, because we did not only that salmon tournament, but we did different species. We did, I think it was a pike tournament, a catfish tournament.
We did the first year. The first year went from walleye to bass to, I don't know if that was pike. No, it wasn't.
Well, there's a pike one.
There was a pike one.
Zero on that one.
I think the following year we did a walleye, a bass, maybe it was 2 bass, and then the salmon. I don't remember all of them what we did, but
you end up buying gear for everything. So I have 2 catfish rods sitting in my basement that I haven't
Used since.
I haven't touched in years.
That's hilarious. As we kind of come into the current time, what have you guys noticed about the kayak fishing tournament side and kind of its maturity and whatnot?
Well, we're just kind of talking about this, but people have really progressed in the technology and what they're putting into their kayaks. It's almost as if it's basically a plastic bass boat at this point for some of those big national tournaments. Guys are running spot lock and autopilot and live scope. But the thing is, you don't really need all of that to be competitive.
No.
You can compete with just a single rod and reel, open-faced or spinning, whatever you'd like to use. They're all going to be competitive. You just have to know what you're doing with it.
Right. Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm actually getting an autopilot this year, a 136 from Old Town, and it's a great kayak for fishing, but I still feel like if I'm going to go into some of these big tournaments, like, I ain't got enough electronics, I mean, like I said, you got live scope, all this forward-facing stuff, and it's like, there are going to be spots where if you don't have it, you're probably going to be struggling because somebody's going to find the fish and be on them, and they're going to see them, and you're still just going to be casting.
I think that's what it. I mean, you make a great point, Nick. Is it necessary? No, right? It's not really not. We've caught fish way before the stuff even was invented.
Right.
I think that it serves a purpose in cutting time down, which in the tournament aspect, that's key, right? You want to maximize your time, and when you think about it in a kayak, it takes you time to get out to wherever you're going because you're paddling or pedaling in most cases. Now with the advent of like either integrated trolling motors or DIY setups now, and they're really intricate and all that stuff. It's definitely going to a place that's I think it's interesting because they are one-man boats for all intents and purposes, are one-man boats, and it's cool to see where people are taking where they're taking this simple idea and just building on and transforming. So with that, what are some of the things that you've kind of maybe transformed with your setup that's maybe took it a little bit further than what the kayak is itself? What have you guys added?
On one of my earlier kayaks, I was getting real big into the LEDs, and I had 4 green LEDs that shot down at a low angle so I could light up the water. And then I lit that sucker up with some LEDs. It was kind of neat because you go out in the morning, you see the alewives out there, and they just skirting across. But you could see down in the water really good with it. But it didn't really help me out. It was kind of cool.
It was a cool factor. There's a lot of cool factors in kayak fishing. That's like, is it really necessary? Not really, but.
I had the same thing. I put some LED lights.
Oh, did you?
Mine were white, just so I could see what's going on, and actually so people can see me, because on Lake Michigan you can hear a boat engine behind you. And it's a little scary because you got to turn completely around to see that boat coming at you, and you're small. You're a little dot on the water, so make yourself seen, make yourself visible, and lights are the best way to do that at night.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very, very important. What about in terms of for you guys? Obviously, safety's big. Just if you want to touch on 1 or 2 things that for you are imperative when it comes to safety out in the water.
For me, and this is a thing I see quite a bit, I think one of the most important things is to have your white light. I have an LED and Atwood, and it's a 48-inch light, so it's well above my head. And it really helps, especially in Lake Michigan, if you're getting into swells. That light is still above my head, and I have a flag attached to it too. But I see a lot of guys, they have their white light, and it's just like, it's not bright. You know, it's legal, but it's not bright, or it could be below their head level. So if the boat's coming in that direction, they're not going to see it at all. So
It's really like the biggest issue I see with the kayakers these days, especially the new ones. Just barely any lighting at all. Impossible to see
right.
them.
And my red and green, I run red and green up front, and they're LED modules, so they pop. They're bright.
And if you have a motor, you have to have a red and green up
Right,
front,
you
don't
do. But even before that, when I paddled, I still had everything on there. More light, the better.
Yeah, I agree.
Same for you as well.
Yeah, I got a flag with a light pole out the back. It's actually one designed for a boat, but
Yep,
again,
same
it's
here.
well above my head. I also have a headlamp. I got the LEDs around the outside. You know, the more light, the better, especially at night, because when boats are coming against you, you look like the horizon. So even if you're coming in at night, you might think you're safer coming back towards harbor, but reality, you blend in with the shoreline so well, and they're not going to see you until they're right on top of you.
Yeah, something that we said before, like there's definitely a market for someone to make a turnkey solution, because you know, like there's one, like you got the VisiCarbon out there. I still use it, but definitely an area even for myself I could improve on that, and maybe someone out there watching has the ingenuity to just turn one out, because there's a community that will definitely find it useful and be ready to.
And they're really easy to make.
And yeah,
The-
you
like
can.
The YouTube
for sure.
videos out there show you how to do it. Like mine cost me like $25, and it's about 1,000 times brighter than a VisiCarbon Pro.
Right.
And it actually still works. Or I'd go through a VisiCarbon like every other year.
Yeah, that's
So-
a really good point. You don't have to have hundreds of dollars to get. I mean, you could easily spend hundreds or thousands to get into this, but
Yeah.
I made my cart out of PVC. I made my original flag out of PVC. Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, all those stores are going to have a ton of resources and a ton of tools you can utilize and modify to make whatever you need to make.
Yeah. And the LED strip lighting, the self-adhesive is really cheap.
Yeah.
And it's really bright. There's no excuse for not being well lit out there.
Yeah, definitely important.
I would say too, don't make yourself into some crazy spaceship that people can't even recognize, and make yourself something just of interest. So somebody's gonna come right up to you to see what is that thing, you know. So I want to look like a boat, so when people see red and green, they know, oh, I'm on this side of his boat, and all that sort of stuff. Because you can become a curiosity for somebody in the dark.
You will get boats that come up to you out there, especially if you're offshore a couple of miles chasing kings in the summertime. They're going to come up to you anyway, so be ready for that.
In my experience, they'll come up because they'll generally check to see. A lot of times it's like they're in shock that you're out 2 miles, 3 miles. Are you okay? I'm good, buddy. Is I reeling a fish? What are you using? But that's always a lot of fun. How for you guys? Obviously, you're still kayak fishing. What is it about it that still keeps you in the kayak, and maybe not necessarily, not to say you don't dabble back in boats, but like I've seen quite a few people that get into it and then next season like, nah, I just went back to a boat, So for you, what's keeping you in the kayak?
Oh, you've been in it longer. Why don't you go ahead?
I find myself getting frustrated in a boat, with my own boat or anybody else's, because I guess you're your own captain when you're out there, so you can make your own decisions. And you can find fish, and you can slow down. And when you find fish, you can stay on them real tight. I'm more like Michigan style fishing, but and there's something just, it's so quiet out there. I think the big thing for me is the mornings, getting out there early, and you're seeing the sunrise. And I'm right outside the city. I might see sirens out there somewhere, but as soon as you get out there, everything just gets quiet, and it's just a great feeling to be out there and just enjoying the morning. And it's just great way to start the day.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would agree. It is super peaceful once you get out there, and everything kind of drowns out, and it's just you and the water, all you can hear. And you can hear other conversations on boats. So if you're one of the boat guys, we can definitely hear.
Oh yeah, we
definitely hear what
do.
you're saying.
There's some. I really need to start record. I need to make that into a thing. I said to myself, I need to record what I hear on the water, and maybe make a dedicated YouTube channel to the radio chatter on the boats, because there's some funny things that they say on the water. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the word kayak travels across the water like no other, because you might hear like kayak, you know.
It really does. It's it's definitely it's a challenge to do this kind of fishing. And obviously we're talking specifically with like Michigan. Not to say that inland fishing's not has its own challenges, especially if you're fishing like busy body of water like the Chain or up in Madison Chain. You got a couple of big bodies of water, very popular, a lot of boats and stuff like that. But for Lake Michigan, when we're talking about going offshore, in the summer periods, or just even if you're near shore, you're going off, 40, 50 feet, it's still far enough where something can happen and you have those close calls. I mean, I distinctly remember quite a few occasions you go out, and I like to think that most of us here anyway, when we go out, we're looking at the weather, we're patterning stuff. Okay, it looks like tomorrow's gonna be a good day, but things can change instantaneously. I mean, I've been in there where just something came up, and now I'm rocking in 4-foot swells, and my booty cheeks are clenched up. I'm like, I hope to God, I mean, I've had some pretty austere moments. What moment for you have you guys run into that had you butt cheeks clenched? Like, oh God, I need to, can you recall?
Oh man, I've had two that I can recall. One on Lake Michigan, it was 4-foot swells, and I'm coming back to a beach, which I prefer to launch from a marina because then you have a protected wall.
Yeah,
and you don't have to worry about it. But I was launching from a beach, and I came back into the launch, and I got my kayak up to 9-point-something miles per hour. I think it was like 9.5 or something.
You were riding the waves in?
I was scared because your front end slows down before your back end, so you end up doing one of those kind of spin outs, and it is not a good feeling when you have hundreds of dollars of gear behind you that you're going to lose potentially. I think the second time I was inland, we were fishing actually in Madison. We had a storm roll through, and it looked like on radar, because we all buy the weather apps. I think everyone spent a couple bucks on a weather app since they started kayak fishing. But we had a lightning storm that was moving in, and looked like radar was going to push it way to the north. But just happened that another cell blew up and went right over the lake. And we're out there, and I could see in the distance lightning, and then all of a sudden I reached to my reel and I saw a spark jump from my finger to the reel. That was weird. And then I put my reel towards my body and I saw another spark go from my elbow or my forearm to the rod. I was like, it's probably time to go. So making sure that you're safe looking at the weather is probably paramount. And those are the two instances where I just didn't feel safe out there. But
You should have waited it out. We got struck. You became a superhero. That's how they all starts, right?
Yeah,
Electric Man.
Yeah. See, I didn't see a film crew. Then I would have known something good was about to happen.
Yeah. Keith, a lot of years on the water. I'm sure there's quite a few of that moments.
Probably my worst one, and it's during a tournament, which is going to make you do your dumbest things. It was during Salmon, and I was at the main gap in Milwaukee, there's three openings. There's the north up by McKinley, main gap is coming up by the river, and then south is South Shore. And it's probably like a mile and a half, I think, from north to south to the center. And a big storm was coming in, and I knew it was coming in. It was coming out of the northeast, and it was blowing, and it was pushing up cold water. And there hadn't been a lot of cold water around. Well, it started like bellowing cold water up by the main gap. And it was weird. It was like kind of dirty water, and all of a sudden this big clear cloud just started coming up. So, of course, I want to catch fish. I'm not in the lead. And I decided I was going to try to troll from the main gap to the north gap. That's where I was coming out of. So I started paddling, and I'm back in the native watercraft. I'm on the outside.
You're on the outside. You're in open water. Okay, that's where I'm like.
And I'm in the ultimate kayak, which is open.
Oh, God.
And so I start trolling, and I'm trolling. And it was like this weirdest thing, because it kind of does a dog leg. And the waves are kind of kicking here, and the waves are coming in here, but there was this like little flat area that was just like sort of smooth all the way there. And I'm thinking like, it's a sign from God. I can just paddle my way all the way there. So I started going. I'm like halfway there. And it's building, and these things are starting to rock off the wall, and it's like a sea tub. It's a tub out there, and I got 2 rods in the water, and I got to a point where I was scared, and I'm like, I handle a boat well. I've been in a kayak and canoes all my life, but still, I knew I couldn't even stop to pull my rods. I ended up doing like a 180, not even caring about the rods, and hoping I didn't get a bite, and I just turned my way back, because I was halfway to the north gap. I had to come all the way back. It was a little faster coming back, but yeah, I got all the way back in there, and there's boats going by, and they're kind of looking at me like
you're crazy.
Yeah. Hope that they didn't check on me, but they were worried about themselves, I'm sure. But I ended up making it back into the North Gap, and I was just like, Oh, big sigh of relief once I got inside that.
Yeah,
Boy.
the big sigh of relief followed by the I need to go to the bathroom immediately. I'll hope that it's unlocked at the marina.
Well, that was a bad one.
Yeah, and I've had it where things pick up and you're like, oh my God, all right, I need to get out of here. And then the fish wants to bite. You're like, no. And you're like, one of these. I'm like, oh God, please. It can get really interesting. Rob, what did I ask you this before? Did we talk about this?
I don't remember. But one time I was off Kenosha fishing, and I was pretty far out. I was up by like the Carthage area. So to get to deeper water up there is a pretty long way.
It's a very long way.
And I was probably like 60 feet, which, I don't know, it's got to be at least 3 miles to 60 off of there.
Out of Kenosha?
Off at that particular area.
Out of that area.
Yeah. And like it was just glass calm, and it was supposed to stay that way all day. And there was just like this little ripple that came out of the north. And I was just like, that wasn't supposed to happen. And I was like, I don't have a good feeling about that. So I turned around, I start heading in, and as I go, it's just getting windier and windier, and it's getting rougher. And now it's pushing like 3-footers, and I was like, should I pull my lines now or what? And of course then, right when I'm thinking, should I pull my lines, I get a king on.
That's when it happens.
And it just keeps getting rougher. And yeah, that was probably the scariest because, like, if I looked over this shoulder, it was just nothing but whitecaps. So I would just make sure I was only looking this way. If you looked like with the waves, it looked a lot calmer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I landed the fish, threw it down in the bottom of the kayak. I don't even know what I did with my other rods, and I just pedaled as fast as I possibly could back to shore. And luckily, the waves were pushing me a bit, but that was a long trip back in.
Man.
Like a real long trip back in.
And I don't think people know if they haven't been in a situation, which hopefully you're not, but I think to a large extent it's inevitable. As much as you plan for the weather, it can turn on you. These things happen. We can't really control Mother Nature, but remaining cool, staying focused. Obviously you need to be out there, honestly, with your radio. I'm always an advocate of being out there with a buddy. If you're going to go out in the open water, have someone around, even if it's boats coming by, let them know you're out there, just for safety reasons. But in those instances where you see the whitecaps and the swells, you just got to do your best to stay cool, calm, stay focused. Because, I think the adrenaline starts kicking, and I know for me, I just get hyper aware, and I'm just really focused. Okay, let me maintain my balance. I'm constantly looking at the wave caps or the waves coming in, so I can time it, so I know how to ride it. I mean, there's a lot of technique and all that. Like how you were saying, you were riding in those waves, you were surfing practically, and there's a way to do it so that it doesn't catch you and swipe your backside. That's a great time to pull out the paddle to help, keep
Just get a 360, you don't have to worry about it. I'm dead serious. I never realized how big of a difference that would make. Oh yeah, you can. There's no more of that.
In what way?
Like if you have that wave pushing the back of the kayak like that, you just turn that and it just instantly corrects. You just make a straight line the whole time.
Yeah, I actually have a little hand paddle that I like to use.
Yeah, you'll
just
never
for
need it again.
Turning myself around, but
You never need it again. Like I didn't realize that it was going to be that big a deal. And then we got caught, like Jerry and I got caught, and we were in the harbor, but the wind cranked at like 40, 45. I mean, and I had to cut across to get back to the launch. And yeah, with the 360, it was like no issue at all. You don't get any of that.
Interesting.
All that movement. It makes sense because you turn it and it's going to do that. But that's also why I don't like beach launches. I hate it.
yeah, you need a marina.
It's
all day.
honestly.
But you still got to get back to the marina. You can still end up in the same,
You can. One thing.
same situation.
Most marinas are protected though.
But if you're out, you still got to come back in.
And the gaps can be the worst.
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. No, the gaps can be worse because
Yeah, just it.
then no, the gaps can be worse because you got it all funnels in, and you've got the boats with the wave coming in, and it's a soup bowl, 100%. Yeah, I agree.
One thing I learned when I first had my first kayak was that Pungo paddling, is that I took it out for fun to play with it on Lake Michigan, and I came out of the gap. There was big rollers coming through, and I was riding them, and I'm like seeing what this thing could do. Not the smartest thing to do. Which I think we talked about, or I heard you talk about. Take first time out there and take it on big waves. And I was by the South Shore Gap, so it's a kind of a weird little gap where it's kind of small, and you got rocks along the edges, and So I'm riding these waves and riding them, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna turn around and just maybe surf this wave in. Well, sure enough, I surfed it, and it was surfing me, and it was obviously your back end started pushing out. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, whoa, 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 and I'm heading right towards the rocks, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, going, thinking like, when is this ride gonna end? I'm like, oh my god! And so that finally the wave settled off, and I turned around and got back into
it.
the safe part. But one thing you can do if you are in a spot where these waves are too big and it will push you, is head straight into the wave and keep it this way forward, and then it'll slowly work your way backwards. You can do that. It's a technique to use.
It's a nice tip. Really nice tip. There's so many intricacies with it because you will find yourself in these conditions in some form of fashion. Actually, a lot of times, I swear it happens on tournament days where the weather wants to just. I mean, I don't know how many in the last 5 years, specifically the salmon tournament up, and I can never say it. Manitowoc, is it right?
In Manitowoc, yeah.
Manitowoc. I screw it up all the time. I know. I think almost every year it seems to be like the worst weather conditions.
Oh man.
Do you guys? I gotta ask you this on behalf of all the kayak guys.
Yeah.
You think about moving it up early September so it's so far back? It seems like that far back up there, the weather just tanks on everyone.
You know, you brought up a really good point. I think out of the last 5 years, we may have had one good weather year.
Yeah. I'm doing it on behalf of everyone. Hey, you're welcome, guys. You're welcome.
You know, instead of moving it up, we actually pushed it back 1 week this year. We have a state kayak bass fishing championship on September 10th. So there's a couple different clubs. Check out our websites and stuff like that, our Facebook links. And there's a way to get qualified. We're going to hopefully take about 50 guys there fishing Green Lake September 10th and 11th. But to your point about the salmon tournament, it's a really fun one because you can fish the river. You know, they go all the way up to the dam, I think.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of years ago, guys were catching them in like 5 feet of water all the way up the river on bass gear. So you don't need fancy stuff. But the weather kind of dictates where and how that tournament looks. So I think we've had storms, we've had rain, we've had strong winds.
Yeah.
So if it's like that, we just say you can't go outside the gap. There's just it's not even fun fishing when there's 35-mile-an-hour winds and 6-foot waves. It's one, dangerous, and two, it is challenging because you're going half mile an hour and then 4 miles an hour, half, 4. The fish look at your lures and they're probably thinking, nah, I'm not eating that. Yeah. So it's not enjoyable. You get wet the whole time. You can't stay dry because the waves are coming over the side the whole time. So we'll limit it back into the harbor, and the fish are there anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, get them to go after it, and that's always the challenge, no matter what. I wanted to shift the convo and start talking about let's talk more in terms of for someone that's watching and listening right now. They want to get out here and start doing this kind of fishing on the lake for salmon and trout. When we talk about kayaks, what are for you important features that folks should be looking at when they're considering purchasing one?
Well, I think one of the biggest factors is you have to feel comfortable and understand how that boat is going to operate when you're in it. So for me, I bought the biggest one I could possibly buy at the time, and I just felt really comfortable in that. Keep my center of gravity nice and low. You know, I don't put the chair in the high position, keep it nice and low. And understanding how it's going to react. You have to get out there like Keith did and try that. Do it without gear just in case the first time or two you take it out, just so you know how it's going to float, you know how stable it is. Maybe try it on a lake and see how far you can lean from side to side. Stuff like that before you get out on big water where, you know, it could be really dangerous because that water is cold. I mean, if you fall in, you got a timeline that starts the moment you start falling in the water. So
yeah, that's a really good point. When you first get your kayak, you really should take it out and just dunk it, flip it, sit in it, kind of just get into like a acclimation period. Keith, what about for you?
Know your kayak, what its capabilities and your physical capabilities. You know, what can you handle? I mean, when I first started, I was pretty young. I was strong. I feel like I'm still pretty strong, but not as strong as I was. I mean, I could paddle for hours and hours, you know. So I felt like if something did come up, I could handle it. And I played with this stuff. You know, I would, like I said, you lean out. How far can I go? And understand what's going to tip you. You know, what's it going to take? So I, you know, even though I had that kayak that was open, I still felt comfortable in there because I knew what it could handle and I knew what I could do with it, you know. And I brought a pump sometimes if I had a wave crash. But that's not. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody going out there because ideally you have a sit on top where something happens, you can jump back on.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all self-draining.
It'll drain
As
out.
long as your hatches are closed. If your hatches are not closed, which is another safety issue,
Yeah.
if your kayak fills with water too. So
I see it a lot too. Guys will be out in the water, and as they're cycling through the gear, because trying to figure out what they're going to hit, they got the compartment open. This hatch is opened up, and to Keith's point, if you flip, that's just a way for the water to seep in faster than it normally would, because most of these they're gonna seep in to some extent. You obviously don't want it to just flood it.
I've talked to 2 people that had a sit-on-top kayak, great kayaks, but the hatch was open, and when they flipped, it filled with water, and it was not good.
And you're not going to bail that out on the water.
No,
You got to
it's
go
not gonna
back.
happen.
You need help getting back, first of all. And then second, you got to flip it over, get all that water out, because you're not going to flip that in the water.
No, and it'll drag you. I learned this from experience. I had that one of mine early on did that, turtled, flipped it, got back in. It must have took on 2 or 3 gallons, so the back end was almost submerged as I was hauling it in. And that's another butt clencher. You get those.
Yeah, because the water doesn't stay in that spot. It's going to
No.
Yeah, so as you're pedaling, you're
you
like,
gotta,
you're doing this. You're like, oh my God.
But you brought up a really good point. Know your physical limitations.
Yeah.
So if you hear the coho are 11 miles off of, Kenosha and 200 feet of water, don't go out there because it's 11 miles to get back. If you get there and you're tired, you still have to troll to catch them. And
Yes.
then you have to come back. That return trip is going to take double the amount of time it took you to get there.
Yeah, I wanted to say, if you were to go out, I mean, the furthest I typically would go, at least in this part, port's different because you don't have to go nearly as far, which is the benefit of it, especially for kayak guys. But you're looking at 4 miles out to get you roughly around 100 feet. And that's really capping it at like a really good day, really calm. Then you still got to troll the area once you get to the fishing grounds, and then you got to troll back in. So at minimum, it's like 8 miles plus whatever you end up doing. I mean, I've run the.
If it's wavy, you got to count the going up and down the wave.
That's a good point. And you're not going to go in a straight line either anymore.
Exactly. You're definitely not. It's going to be a much longer paddle than you're expecting it to be.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I run tracks when I'm out there, and so at the end of the trip, I can see how many miles it runs. And I mean, this past year especially, you're running 10 to 15 miles a trip. So if you are legging it with a pedal, obviously, I think this is an important part that we could talk about, which is being kind of efficient in your setups, because the more you bring, and I know this is more typical of you bass guys out there. Yeah. They got every rod in the back, every lure. But for Lake Michigan kayak fishing, I think it's in my opinion a different scenario where you want to be more cognizant of what you're bringing so that you're more efficient. So when you're going out there, what are your setups? What are you bringing out? How much stuff and all of that.
I bring up way too much stuff all the time, and I can't help
Oh,
it.
so
I have a problem.
You're the bass guy in sending guys clothing. Got it.
Yeah, so normally I'll have 3 rods, unless I think I'm going to end up jigging somewhere out there. But I'll have 3. I'll have 2 set up with a torpedo, and then 1 copper.
So, Nick, can you talk to us about the tournament series, the Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Tournament Series, and what it's about, how people can get involved, a little bit about what the trail looks like this year?
Yeah,
I think you guys
absolutely.
changed it up a little bit, right?
Yeah, we did switch it up a little bit. So we're going to some new lakes this year, kind of trying to broaden everyone's techniques. But we start off in April, and that's going to be down in Lake Geneva. And the way the series is structured is there's 5 bass events and then 1 salmon event. The salmon event doesn't count towards Angler of the Year, so if you're worried about all the points and all that, that is just a fun event. Come fish that one because it's a great time. But we'll kick off the bass events in April, and then we have one in May, June, the end of July, and then our championship is going to be in La Crosse in August, and that's going to be a 2-day event. We take your best 4, so you get to drop your lowest score, because they have vacations, life happens. So we're not going to penalize you because you have something going on. We're not all competitive like Keith here, pros. So we realize you got other obligations you got to commit yourself to. So we take your best 4. The top 10 are going to then qualify for the state kayak championship, which is new this year. We partnered up with the other clubs in the state, and we're going to hold a championship event. It's going to be on Green Lake, September 10th and 11th. It's going to be an invite only, so you got a place in the top 10. And we're hoping to crown, we will be crowning, not hoping, we will be crowning our first state champion, which is kind of unique and kind of excited for that this year.
Yeah, that's pretty. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting into that. And my son's going to be competing this year, so we'll see if we can get
nice.
a couple of us in here.
I wanted to ask you, I know that, I don't know if this impacts you guys at all, but I know Illinois DNR enacted this new tournament thing. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. How has it changed how you guys are going to operate?
Yeah.
Because clubs throughout the state were not really happy about it. So
No, that's a really good point. They're not happy about it. But from what the DNR rep explained to me via email, this is a rule that's been in place for all other clubs. They're just now saying, wait a minute, fishing has been exempt for however long, and we got to make it apply to them so it's fair for everybody. So that's what they're really doing, is they're just making an old rule now apply to the fishing world. Without getting too political or into the details of all of that, we've elected not to go to Illinois this year. Just a choice that our club has made. So we'll be fishing all of our events in Wisconsin this year. We try to pick some events like Lake Geneva to start things off that are really close to the
right over the border
there. So
Yeah.
we still get, hopefully down south, and we get some of those Illinois anglers to come and join our series and partake and compete with us. But, it's kind of a bummer, really. I think, I don't know if they're doing it to get additional revenue or why the decision was made. But I was kind of hoping maybe next year they'll look at what they did and choose to reverse it.
Right.
Yeah, because there's quite a few clubs and organizations that have done the same thing. They're moving their operations out of state to. I mean, you knew it was gonna happen, and for people not familiar with that, essentially they implemented it's essentially, I'll call it like I see it. It seems like it's a tax on the prize pot, right? Because it's taking 10% of the prize pot
of the
itself,
pot.
which if you have multiple events, that's 10% of every event, and that adds up.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the anglers.
It doesn't go to the anglers, and to be quite honest, and the kayak fishing space itself is still in its infancy on the tournament side. It's hard to get people or brands involved to sponsor already, especially if they're trying to ask for like monetary, support to fund the operation. It's challenging. So it was a bummer to see that, and like you said, maybe they'll take a look and maybe they could just do it just a one-time fee overall, just take it off the front and then leave it. I think that'd be a balance in my opinion. But you gotta. It's interesting because your trail is shifting to,
Yeah, we used to have an event in Illinois every year, and we've actually I think there used to be two when it first started off.
Yeah.
But we've actually kind of gone away from that because one, permits are really challenging to get in Illinois because they only allow like one event, I think, per weekend per a body of water. So that's one challenge. And then second, now this tax on top of that, it really kind of double layer or double whammy if you want to think of it that way. So easiest solution is just avoid it altogether. So we're going to keep all of our events in Wisconsin this year.
Yeah. No one's going to fault you. No one reasonable. No one competing that wants to win a prize pot is going to, complain. So,
Right.
And of course, where can people go to get involved, get more info?
Oh, great question. So you can check us out on our Facebook page. It's going to have the most information for right now. I've had a couple questions already about Tourney X. That's the tournament system we use. And if you fish competitively, you know what that is already. If not, you can check it out. They have a website. You can search for our events. We'll also post the event link on our Facebook page. But those will be out here in the next couple of weeks for all of our events. We're just waiting for the last couple permits to come through from the DNR.
I wanted to ask you, now, this doesn't really apply to the salmon side of things, because our salmon fishing is put and take, right? We catch it, you're going to harvest it and whatnot. But for the bass side of it, is it still going by length, or are they converting over? Because I've always wondered this. I've never competed, right? So this is me from the outside. I genuinely ask from the outside, because I've caught fish that are short but they're fat. But if you have a long fish that's skinny, you end up winning by length. So how does that work? I'm genuinely curious. Is it just
total length?
So it is total length.
Yeah.
So you just got to find the length that's
You just
just
have
the
to make
longest, skinniest.
Your strategy just has to be towards length.
Yeah.
Find the skinny, long ones.
The skinny, long. There's a couple lakes I know they got long, skinny fish.
If you can catch long, skinny bass, you're going to be doing pretty well in all tournaments.
That's the secret to it all.
But it's total length, so you get your 5 biggest. You can catch 100 fish, but just count your 5 biggest, and you take a picture on a board. There's some rules about how it's got to be laying on the board, and a token has to be in the image. And you just submit it through an app, through the Tourney X app, and then they're all judged remotely. So it's kind of slick. You don't have to worry about keeping the fish. If you're just getting into it, practice this. Because I can't tell you how many fish I've, especially that first year, man. I probably had a dozen fish DQ'd, and I didn't understand why. Awesome day in the water, had like 90 inches of bass, and then Come to find out, it's only 85 because all the mouths were a quarter inch open or something.
Oh, so you're penalized.
Yeah, some stupid penalty, and it's because I didn't read the rule. I didn't know it. So make sure you read the rules, understand what you're doing, practice it, and then it'll be fluent in a tournament event. So
How many big fish did you have? Like, oh yes, let's go. You put it on the bump board and they flop right off.
Too many. So, you only have to have one, and then you learn to put your net down or put a backboard so it can't jump in. You actually put your net over the side, don't you?
Yeah, I put my net just in case that's the flip zone where if he's gonna go out, he's gonna be on that side. So then I put my net there, and then
always flip towards the head end. So
That's a big pro tip right there, guys.
Yeah.
I never lost one off the board, but I actually had my net up out of the water. This is down in Lake Gunnersville, and I swear the fish down there are different. They want to jump all the time. Our fish go down in the net. Their fish, their nose is constantly coming up, and I had him in the net. I grabbed my board, and he right out of the net. I was like, it was out of the water like this far, and he jumped right out. That was
not his first time being caught.
He knew the deal. Yeah. Well, a lake like that, I mean, it's a lot of tournament fishing pressure, right? Like that's a very popular bass lake in the country. So
very much.
those fish are probably, I know the routine, buddy. I know the routine. Let's make this quick. I got dinner with the wifey. So as we wrap this all up here, there are great opportunities for those of you that are currently kayak fishing that want to look into getting more in the competitive side. Some of the great things about it, much like on the boating side, we've had conversations on the tournament side of salmon fishing out of the boat. Very comparable in that you're going out here, you're meeting veteran anglers like Keith and others and Nick that have been doing this, that you can learn from out in the water, that you can network with, that it helps to get you going. You might not win that first season, but that's something that you can learn from and apply for the next season when you grow those results and get better with it. And really a lot of it comes down to just, if you want to meet more people, because what I get a lot of messages I receive is, hey, Michael, I'm new to this. I've seen some of your videos, trying to find other people to do this with. And here you are, you can join, a tournament group, meet other folks, get out in the water and get involved. Are there any final thoughts you guys wanted to add to that?
Man, not really. I mean, we kind of covered a lot of aspects, a lot of topics. I'm sure people might be watching, have follow-up questions, and I think just letting them know they can always reach out to us. You can always ping any one of us and kind of ask questions and say, what about this? What about that? And any of us would be happy to answer and address some of those questions.
Sure. Yeah, as well. Rob, any final thoughts?
No, I got nothing.
Yeah, sounds about right. Well, guys, thank you for joining us on this episode of Lake Michigan Angler Podcast. I want to thank Nick and Keith for joining us, making their time out, making the rides all the way down here to the shop here to share their info, their insight, a little bit of the stories. As always, these conversations can go on for much longer, so we'd love to have you guys back for a future one. If not before the end of this season of the podcast, we'll definitely get you guys back for the next one and expand. Obviously, because kayak fishing is continually growing. Sure. I'm sure you guys see just as much as I do every day. More folks are getting into it. Mm-hmm. What kayak do I get? How do I do this? How do I rig it? And so on and so forth. So it's a great opportunity for those of us that are been doing it for a while to help those new folks in, get you on board so you can do this safely. And obviously to help you get on the fish so you can have a great time and really get to experience what we experience, which is why we love being in a kayak, is that very personal, intimate, you're really battling that fish, man. When you get that one, you're getting dragged, as you guys shared, you're getting dragged in the water. There's nothing else like it, nothing else like it. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget always to throw a thumbs up on the video, share it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel as well, and we'll see you guys in the next one.